Welcome to a full tour of all my house plants. I'm going to show you all the 250 plus plants in my house, and there's been a few changes since the last tour I did a few months ago, so I'll show you all those. And we're also in the depths of winter in the UK, so we'll see how my plants are getting on. So in my dining room, I have this fireplace here and the fireplace mantle, so I've got a selection of plants on here. I'll try and cram as much as I can and try and give them as much light as possible. The big bay windows kind of over there, and it's probably getting about medium to low light this area, so I've got some plants that I think will do okay in lower lights. So I've got a little Califea here, Califea Macoyana, I think this is called. So this is doing okay since I switched to using water conditioner on all my plants, and all the new leaves are coming out quite nicely. Barely any brown edges anymore, which is good. I've got a video on that on the channel. Really nice plant, not really grown that much, probably because it's quite far away from the window. Next to it is a Pothos Devil's Ivy, which as you can see, looks like it's losing a lot of the variegation because it's in quite a low light spot. It's probably medium to low light here, but it's growing up this trellis trellis, wall mounted trellis that you can get on their website. You can use my 15% discount in the description to the video. So the pothos is climbing up this thing, and it looks like it's also trying to attach to the wall, which I'm not really sure how I feel about. I don't know if I want the aerial roots to grow into the plaster. So when I eventually move from this house, which I might do in a few years, pulling that plant off the wall might be quite interesting. So I don't know whether I want to leave it to grow on the wall or not. Let me know what you think about that. On another trellis, this one goes into the planter. It's got little plastic feet. Got a Monstera Adansonii. So this was a lot bigger a couple of months ago. It was all over this trellis, and it was looking a little bit straggly, mainly because it's in a little bit of a lower light position, but also because, I don't know the reason actually, just some of the leaves came out a bit deformed. So I cut it right back essentially. There's 4 main stems in here and I cut them right back, and it's grown new leaves, so that's a new leaf there. That one's not got any fenestrations actually, which is quite odd for a Monstera Adansonii. Not sure why that is. All the rest of them have come out with fenestrations. Anyway, but they're all coming out a bit better than before, but because it's in a bit of a low light spot, it's probably not the healthiest. I've got my Pete McKee picture here. I often get comments on the videos. People do like this picture. It's called Sea Breeze by Pete McKee. He's an artist in Sheffield. So next to the Adansonii, I have my Syngonium Red Arrow, which is an absolutely gorgeous plant. This is actually a cutting of the mother plant that passed away, unfortunately. I had it hanging next to my window, and I think it was getting too much light, and all the leaves went brown and faded. Wasn't getting enough water as well, I don't think. So this one's doing better, but it's a slow grow because it's in a lower light spot. And I probably will eventually get some sort of support system for it to climb up, because it's kind of doing yoga at the moment. And then next to that is a little bit of a plant nemesis, my green-orange plant, Chlorophytum orchidastrium, I believe it's called, which is now looking very nice, I must say. But it's been a long checkered history with this plant because all the leaves were going black. And that was because I think it's very sensitive to chlorine, and it's also sensitive to high light. It doesn't like high light as far as I'm aware, my experience tells me. So it's in the same family as the spider plant. So similar issues, don't like chlorine in the water. So I've been using water conditioner, which you'll find on my Amazon store. Link below in the description to this video. And it's really saved my bacon with loads and loads of plants, especially my Califeas and my plants that are in the spider plant family. So all the leaves are now coming out much healthier. There's new leaves in the middle. Growing nicely. Got a little fungus gnat catcher there. And then next to that is pink Syngonium in this terracotta pot, which I haven't glazed, which means this seeps out water, loads and loads and loads. And it's always quite dry, the soil. So I'm having to water every 2 or 3 days. And I bottom water. It's quite a small saucer, so every 2 days really, to try and keep this happy, because otherwise it tends to flop over and the leaves go a little bit crispy. But other than that, it's a nice plant, not in the best light. for this type of Syngonium, but it's good enough. And then before I show you what's underneath, I'll just show you this new kind of fixture that I've got here. So this is a floor lamp that I just got from Amazon, and I've got a Sansi grow bulb, 30 watt grow bulb plugged into it, shining over all these plants that I'll show you now. So I think this is a bit of a new section. So just underneath my fireplace mantle on the hearth, I've got this little station with this grow light. So I've now got 3 kind of grow light stations where I kind of do my propagations, kind of rehabbing and kind of looking after plants that need lots of light, especially during the winter. So that's what I've got here. So I've got a stool, an IKEA stool, and an IKEA kind of step stool. So it's got 2 layers. So basically I've got a bunch of alocasias, really, because they're the fussy ones, as we all know. So this, what's this called? I can't remember what this is called. It's a type of alocasia, but really interesting leaves. Big fan of this. This is fairly new. I've had this only maybe a month and a half, something like that. So I bought it just as we were going into winter, preventing it, trying to stop it from going into winter dormancy, losing all its leaves. So I've got it under this grow light. So this is a 30 watt grow light. And this makes this spot about medium light, about 600 foot candles, 700 foot candles, something like that. It's quite a big spread as well, which is good. This is another alocasia. I should also say that I bought this in soil, this alocasia, and I transferred it to kind of semi-hydro, but using perlite. So I'm just experimenting different semi-hydro. I've never done it before. Might bring it onto the channel soon. How plants grow in semi-hydro. So I've got a few bits in perlite, semi-hydro rocks, I think are they called, and leca. So that alocasia is in perlite, and I've got another alocasia in perlite. Nice pots, complement each other quite nicely. But another alocasia here, and again I can't remember the name, begins with a Alzizi or something like that. Maybe someone will correct me in the comments. But it's in semi-hydro, so you have a reservoir of fertilised water. It keeps the perlite nice and moist, and then the roots will grow happily in there apparently. And there's a new leaf starting to come through there. So this was a bit of a beaten up plant when I bought it. I bought it at the same time as that. It was reduced because the leaves are kind of, well, look at it. But with an alocasia, once they get going, they tend to be quite quick to grow, I think, as long as you give them lots of light. That's the case with my fry deck anyway. So we'll see how that one grows. I've got lots of these dotted around. Doesn't look like much at the moment. This is a propagation of my Philodendron verrucosum. So this is a plant I got in an unboxing video last year, and it just deteriorated completely. All the leaves went crispy brown. So I propagated it, propagated all the leaves to kind of start again. So that's a new stem that's coming through, all successfully propagated in water. So I potted them up into soil and just waiting for new growth. Some of them have got new leaves and some of them haven't. I have about 8 of them, I think, in the house. I'll show you dotted around the house. And I've got one that I'll show you that's quite interesting in a little bit because it's something that I've never done before. So that is kind of just sat on this saucer. It looks a bit ugly with this fungus gnat catcher, but it's on this step here. And then I've got a bunch of alocasia propagations, I guess you'd call. So I had the mother plant that was sending out lots of stems from the soil. So I separated, got all the corms out and potted them up into leca and semi-hydro. So that's one there, just a little baby plant. So I did this only a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. So I've got lots of these dotted around under these grow lights. So I'm trying to prevent them from going into dormancy and for them to push out lots of new growth. So this one is a bit better, a bit of a bigger propagation. There's a new leaf coming through there. So I've got 5, 6 or 7 of these here. And I've got this one here, which is just a corm. Didn't have any sprouts coming out of it. So I put that into leca, see how it grows. I've got another one in semi-hydro there. Try and prevent all the water dripping all over my floor. And then here, I don't know whether you can see it on the camera, yes you should be able to, is an experiment I'm doing. So I've never grown anything in leca or semi-hydro before. So I thought I would go all in, so to speak. And I had a Monstera that I propagated a year and a half ago, something like that, and I put 2 plants into the same pot in soil. I'll show you the other one in a bit. So I separated them, kept one of them in soil and put one of them in leca. So we'll see the difference between the growth between the two, and hopefully that'll be a video on the channel coming soon. See how much they grow. So I've got that facing the grow light and I'm not moving it. So I don't want the Monstera leaves to start facing in all different directions. It looks ugly that way. And then I have a couple down here, a couple of Dieffenbachias, which are in nice pots. And they are doing better than they were when I first got them last year. They were getting lots of mushy leaves. You probably would have seen it on the channel, me moaning about it. They still do get yellow leaves like these ones at the bottom here. Let's pull this one off actually while we're here. But I think that's just par for the course for a Dieffenbachia. Very nice variegation on both of these plants though. So these kind of live just down here and they get just a little bit of dappled light from this grow light, Sansi grow light, which is probably just about enough for them. So this here is one of 3 propagation stations or kind of grow light setups that I have in the house. Got 2 here in the dining room and 1 in the living room that I'll show you. So it's just on an IKEA trolley. I think they still sell these in IKEA. It's a free kind of stage trolley. And just on the top here with this Sansi clip-on grow light. So it's got 2 10-watt bulbs here. So just hanging over these little propagations that I've got going on here. So again, I've got more of these Alocasia Frydek propagations, the corms that I put in semi-hydro. There's a new leaf just starting to sprout. So that's good. I've got a very fussy Alocasia here. I think this is a, can't remember the name of it. I'll put it on screen. But this always seems to go down to 1 leaf every winter, even despite the fact that I have it under this grow light. So this one is currently losing its leaf, this leaf here, and this is the strongest leaf that came out this year. It's only grown 2 leaves this year for some reason. I bought it as a little baby plant last year and still not growing that handsomely. And then in this little corner here, I've got 4 Monstera wet sticks, and I've got them in different substrates to see how each of them will grow. So I've got one there in water, so we'll see how that grows in water. Oh. Got one in soil in there, nothing's happening yet. I only did this a couple of weeks ago. One in leca, and then one in perlite. So I'm seeing which one is going to convert the Monstera wet stick into a plant. So a wet stick is just a node, just a single node without any leaves of the Monstera. And you can grow a plant. I've done it before, I'll show you that in a sec. So I'm seeing which method is going to produce the best results. My money's on the perlite because it's got the lid on, high humidity. So we'll see how we get on with that. So this here in front of my dining room bay window, got a nice big bay window, lucky enough to have that. This is kind of the main area where I keep probably most of my best plants. First, I've got this new IKEA stand here. So I've got 3 plants on here. It's only a cheap little black thing. It's not the most sturdy thing in the world. I think it might actually be broken because it's wobbling about all over the place. Never mind. So I've got 3 plants on here. This is a Stromanth, very nice plant in this nice orange pot. I do like pots that are nice and bright. And this is a nice easygoing plant actually. I think it's in the Califea family. The leaves do pick up a bit of dust and dirt, which is a bit annoying, but they don't go crispy brown. So I've had this a few months now, maybe a bit longer than a few months. Seems very happy. So I've got some diatomaceous earth dusted on top of the soil to stop fungus gnats getting in. I've got a video on that that you can check out. I'll pop this over here. Next to that is a Califea, which I can't remember the exact name of it, but this was in my zero light experiment video that I did on the channel, where I put my plants in zero light for 100 days to see how they would do. And this was one of them, and it's firing on all cylinders. responding very well. So it does have some crispy leaves, but I think that's just a legacy from not having light for 3 months. All the new leaves are coming out quite handsomely. There's one in the middle. So yeah, it's coming back to full health, this plant, which is good. So in front of the stand, I've got this money tree, which is a very nice plant. So this featured in another video where I gave my plant milk for 3 months. Got lots of weird experiments on the channel. So this is one that I didn't give milk, and the other one that I did give milk has sadly passed away, rest in peace, to Milky Joe, is what I called him in the video. It looks like the soil with this plant is quite dry, so it does need a drink. But there's lots of new growth coming out of the top, which is always what you want to see with a money tree. So this is the other Monstera. So I had one, this is the one that I had 2 in one pot, and I've got one of them in leca and one of them in soil. So they're pretty much identical looking plants. So it'd be interesting to see which grows best. The leca one or the soil one. This is one of my favourite plants. This is a Anthurium. I just love the leaves on this plant, absolutely gorgeous. Kind of velvety leaves. It produces these weird little flowers here. Don't amount to much, probably should cut them off really. But the foliage is absolutely stunning, all facing in one direction. So I have it plonked on this bench here, so you only get to see the ugly side of it really. But I don't mind that, I prefer to have a nice healthy plant. I've got a orchid, I've got 2 orchids in the house, which have more or less finished flowering. That one's finished flowering, that one's still hanging on with a few. It's got a couple of new buds that are yet to open, and some open flowers. So this one's white flowers, and this one's obviously white and purple. Very nice when in full health. Well, it's in full health, just not flowering at the moment. The leaves are nice and firm, nice and green. That's what you want with an orchid. So I'll put that back. It's a very awkward plant to put somewhere though, because you've got this small part and then you've got these wide, big, massive green leaves and these tall sticks to support the flower spikes. So I struggle to find somewhere to put these plants. So I've managed to squeeze it on up here. And then this plant is interesting. Not this one, that one's my orchid one. This one here is one of my Philodendron verrucosum cuttings that I've got growing up my very first live moss pole. I've actually got 2 plants like this. One I'll show you a bit in my living room. And I've got this one growing up this moss pole that I've made. So it's a verrucosum cutting. There's a new leaf there. And I've tied it to this moss pole so that the aerial roots will grow into the moss, strengthen the plant, and the leaves will get bigger and bigger as it grows higher and higher. And the beauty of these moss poles is a plastic frame that you buy that you then stuff with moss. So I bought both of these off Amazon. And the beauty is that they are extendable. There's little holes at the top there. You can plonk another one of these in and then tie it. I think that's what you do anyway. You tie them together with the support that they provide. It's quite good because lots of complaints with moss poles that I see on the internet is that they tend to dry out very quickly, but because these are wrapped in plastic, got plastic around the back and in the front with like a kind of grate system so that the air roots can grow into. Don't want it to fall on the floor. It keeps the moss a bit more moist for longer. Just feeling it, it does feel like it probably does need to be topped up with water. I did this only last week, so I've not actually topped it up with water yet, so I'm guessing you just pour it in the top and it will filter through to the bottom. I'm just not sure how it affects the soil. So that should be interesting because I've never done it before, so I'll probably provide you with some updates on the channel how that's growing. So again, I've got that facing the light, so you can only see its back side. So I'll do that while it's growing, while it's developing those leaves, and then once it looks like a proper nice healthy plant, I'll probably move it somewhere where you can enjoy the foliage up against the wall so you don't have to rotate, because you don't want to rotate that, We want it to stay in one position for it to grow in one way, and then all the leaves face in one direction. And then next to that, the final plant on this bench that I've got here is a bit of a plant nemesis of mine, the Pilea peperomoides, Chinese money plant, which doesn't look too bad at the moment actually. There's a yellow leaf there and there's a black leaf there. They always die off, the oldest leaves always die off at the bottom, even on the babies that are sprouting out. There's another one. So I've got lots of these at the moment. There's another one. So it's just one of those things. If this is happening to your plant, then don't panic. It happens to the best of us. As long as you've got healthy growth at the top and you've got babies at the base growing to fill in the space that the main plant has left behind when it shed all its lower leaves. So that's what we're doing. If they're going yellow like that one, and there's still some resistance, I just leave it. I just wait for it to get to that stage and then I plonk it off, pull it off. But not too bad at the moment. It's just when you've not seen to it for a while and it's got all these lower leaves that have fallen off, it tends to look a little bit ugly until you come in and tidy it up. But it's not too bad. So I've got a video on the channel about how to look after one of these and how to stop the leaf drop or how to slow it down as much as you can. So I'll leave you to watch that. So on the actual windowsill, which is the bottom bit, I've got a shelf built on top. This is my local joiner here in Sheffield that built this nice wooden structure over the top so I can have more and more plants, which blocks quite a lot of the light having all these plants here, but I think it looks quite nice anyway. But on the lower shelf, I've got a blue moonstone, which is a succulent. I got this from IKEA a little while ago, a little baby plant. I think this was one single stem, which I think was that one, that has since gone to the side and it's produced all these new stems. Quite a happy plant. A lot of the farina has kind of rubbed off as I've kind of been messing around with it over the last few months, accidentally brushing past it probably, but it doesn't seem to mind too much. They look nice and plump, which is what you want with a succulent. Next to the blue moonstone is a type of peperomia. Can't remember the name of it, I don't think. Peperomia something or other, but it's a succulent type peperomia, thick leaves. And it's growing a little bit in an odd fashion, so I probably do need to cut this back and maybe propagate some of this, because it's growing in quite a funny way. So it's in a pot without drainage holes, which is interesting. And I'm very careful with the watering. Feels a little bit crunchy like I could do with top up, but it stores lots of water in the thick leaves. I think it's a gravelins maybe. So yeah, a little bit of an odd shape, so I probably need to look at that. I just don't know how to deal with it, so I've been avoiding it. And it's kind of been in this shape for a very long time, months and months and months. So next to that is the mother plant to the Alocasia frydek that I was showing you, which is down on the hearth to my fireplace. And this is looking very healthy. So that's the newest leaf, which is looking very healthy, very nice, very velvety. So these ones, that one looks like it's on its way out. When they tend to droop like that, it means that they're on their way out. So I'm expecting that to turn yellow and die off. Same with this one probably as well. And I'm not sure whether I'll get leaves during the winter, so I might just be down to 3 leaves, which is par for a course for an alocasia. I'll probably lose these 2, keep these 3, and hopefully new growth will come in spring. That tends to be what happens with these alocasia plants. Next to it is one of my favourites. It's a Tradescantia. So I used to have loads and loads of Tradescantias in the house, but I got sick of them basically because of how they grow. Basically they're a ground cover, so they much prefer to be outside on a big field or on the ground where they can spread their vines and take over like a weed. Some of you might be experiencing that in your area if you're warm enough. But this one is a tricolour or quadricolour, one of the two. Seems to have both names on the internet. And it's got lovely variegation in the leaves, cream and pink colours. This is not the mother plant. The mother plant has since gone, I believe, but it's so easy to propagate. Probably propagates in a couple of days, really. All you need to do is just rest it on the soil and it'll grow roots and it'll turn into a nice full plant. And that's what you have to do with Tradescantias. You have to keep setting them back or propagating them to get a nice lush plant. Otherwise the stems die off at the base of the plant and you have an ugly specimen in your house. This is a propagation of satin pothos in this little IKEA pot. Still got the tag on. Do like the leaves on this plant, and the propagations have taken very well. There's 3 stems in there. So I probably do want to get one of these plants growing on a moss pole or on a plank of wood so that the leaves get nice and big. That's what you want. And then this little guy is my green syngonium. I used to have a larger green syngonium. This is a cutting of the mother plant. I looked at it one day, the mother plant this was, and it was absolutely covered in aphids. And to be honest, I didn't really want to deal with it, so I kind of added it to the compost pile essentially, but I've still got the cutting that is growing quite nicely, and it leans over to one side to face the light, so I do have to rotate it quite regularly, so I'll do that now, so it faces this way. And then next to that is a little heart-leafed Hoya. I think Mrs. Sheffield got me that for a present. Next to that is another peperomia, Peperomia obtusifolia, which has these weird flowers that sprout out of the top. That one's died off. There's a nice live one there. This feels quite light, so probably does need a drink. There's a bit of webbing there. I think that might just be spider webbing there. Doesn't look fine enough for spider mite webbing. Yeah, looking a little bit ropey actually, this one. Got a much nicer specimen in the living room that I'll show you in a bit, but that one's feeling dry, so I need to top up with water. I've obviously been ignoring it for a little bit too long. Next to that is a terrarium, open terrarium, succulent style one. I did this for the channel for a succulent care video that you can check out. So I've got a couple of echeverias in here, I think, and a jade, Gollum jade, or Gollum fingered jade, which don't seem to be outgrowing each other too much. Got some plants over here that I'm quite proud of. This one being one of them. It's a Pothos Devil's Ivy. You can show that. This is growing up a plank of wood, and I started it as a little cutting, and it's attached its aerial roots to the plank of wood. So that means that the leaves are going to get bigger and bigger as it grows higher and higher up this plank of wood, which is good, already starting to happen. And the variegation has kept very well because it's in this nice bright spot on this east facing window. So it gets lots and lots of morning sun. It's not burning the leaves, and they're coming out very, very handsomely. You might worry about rotting of the wood in the soil, but in my experience, it does go black, but it tends to hold out for a long enough time to have these plants. Right in the corner here, I won't be able to get it, is my Hoya Lisa, right in the corner there, because it's grown all the way up there and onto my another devil's ivy that I've got that I'll show you in a bit. So it's kind of entangled itself all over this shelving unit here in this plant, so that means that the pot is trapped in there. So I don't know how I'm going to repot it when the time comes. This is a coleus. I can't remember the exact name of the coleus. So this was, I've cut this back recently. You might have seen it on the channel, and it looking a bit bigger with leaves, but I cut it back. I kind of snipped the tips off so they can branch out more, which is what it's doing. These new leaves are branching out. So we have a nice extra bushy coleus. So that's one of 2 plants, 2 of the same plants. I'll show you the other one in a little bit. And these love as much light as you've got in your house, I think. Well, in my climate anyway, because the sun's not that strong. The more light you give it, the more red the leaves go. And it's got this lovely green outer perimeter, which is very nice. And then growing on here is a Pothos Marble Queen. So I want this to do the same thing as this plank of wood, but on a nicer plank of wood. So this is another trellis trellis. This is the Zella, I think it's called. And I highly recommend these things because they're absolutely gorgeous. Lovely grain of wood. and they're extendable as well, so you can keep going. So this is a young plant that I've put up against this trellis, and hopefully the area roots will attach. You'll get nice big marble pothos leaves growing on that, up that really nice trellis. So that's that one. Next to that is my big boy. Well, quite big for me anyway. I don't tend to have massive plants, not like some other YouTubers. But this is obviously a jade plant, and this is one of my biggest jades in the house. I've got a couple dotted around. So this one I've recently pruned back. Looks like that one's pruned back and it's only grown one stem, which is quite odd for a jade. Normally they always grow two without fail. So I don't know whether one broke off or something like that. But super bushy, isn't it? Really gorgeous plant. Lots of light is what they want. Direct sun, if it's not too strong. Direct sun is absolutely perfect in my environment. And regular pruning, regular snipping back, and you get a nice bushy jade similar to that one. Next to that is another plant that I've got on a plank of wood, Melanochrysum. So again, similar to the Varicosum, I got it delivered on an unboxing video and it went downhill. I think it didn't like the transportation, and all the leaves, it was quite a big plant, quite tall ended up being, but all the leaves, some of them came out deformed and brown and all this kind of nonsense. So I cut it right back, and this is the plant. So I propagated a few, and this is the mother plant, and it's grown tons of new stems. That's the original leaf, and it's grown lots of new stems. So I imagine one will become the dominant one, which looks like it'll be this one in the middle with this leaf here. And I'm trying to get it to attach onto that plank of wood, which I think is a bit more tricky with philodendron rather than pothos. So I was watching Jeff at Everything Plants and he was talking about this, how philodendron don't really like to attach onto wood. They need moss poles, which is why I've got that philodendron vericosum on a moss pole. But that's happy enough there, and we'll see if it'll attach to the wood. So next to the Melanochrysum, I've got one of my favourite plants, the Ficus elastica tineke. Lovely variegation on the leaves. This one is really, really healthy. This is a cutting from the mother plant that I've since propagated, cut it right back and just started again with all these stems, because it was going quite leggy, leaning over to one side, and lots of the leaves were going brown and mushy. Wasn't happy for some reason. So this cutting is about a year old, I think, maybe a year and a half, something like that. It stopped growing because it's winter, but all this new growth was this year because it's in a nice bright spot, and that's what ficus plants absolutely love. And I cut this one back nice and early here, because it was one stem, cut it right back and propagated the cuttings there, and it's branched out successfully into two nice trunks, which is exactly what you want. It's a bit hit and miss when you do that with a ficus plant. Sometimes you cut it back and only one stem grows, or one deformed stem grows somewhere else. But with this one, it worked out perfectly, which is great. And that is an absolutely gorgeous plant in this pink pot. So I'll put that back, which is quite tricky to do because it's quite a big plant in quite a small space, but I do want to give it lots and lots of light. So I try not to have the leaves bending over against the window. So I've got my orchid next to that, which I've already shown you. This is the satin pothos mother plant. So this is one that I cut right back again because it was looking quite lanky and I wanted it to grow up this plank of wood. But the new growth seems to be coming out a little bit deformed. That stem is anyway. That's the old leaf. But there are some other stems starting to grow, and I did this a few weeks ago. And it slowed down quite significantly over the winter despite being in this spot. Still a nice pot though. And then next to that is another marble queen, pothos marble queen. It's one of my favourite pothos plants because of the lovely variegation in the leaves. Very, very light colour. And this is another one I cut right back. And it's growing new stems. So I cut it right back there. It was again another lanky plant. What I've tended to do with all my climbing plants is cut them right back and put them up against something to grow nice and big, to get those big leaves, Cindy Plant Guy style. So yeah, like this trellis trellis. This is a slightly bigger one to the other one that I showed you. This is a Zella Grande. And again, it's extendable, so you can keep going and going. There's a 15% discount. In the description, I think it's 15, might be 10%. There's a discount that you can find on there. And then here is my lipstick plant, Aescananthus, I think it's the proper name. So this one wants as much light as you can give it. Feeling very light, so it does need a drink, quite dehydrated. The problem with this guy is that he suffers because for whatever reason, I tend to forget that he exists. So when I'm kind of looking over my plants here, even though it's in my eye line, I tend to not see it for some reason. I'm kind of focused down here. I'm checking all these with a probe and then watering them, and then I kind of forget about this guy. So he loses out on the watering session, which is a bit of a shame. But either way, still producing some flowers, sporadic flowers here or there, but they're mostly all died off. It's very prolific, just continued to grow loads and loads of flowers last summer. But yeah, it needs a drink, and it probably needs a trim. I've got a care video on this plant on the channel. One of the main pieces of advice is to prune at the end of winter. I think that's the advice anyway, from what I can remember. But go check out the video anyway. Very nice plant. So just to the side of my bay window in the dining room, got a little shelving unit here that I've turned into a plant shelving unit. That's what I do to most things in my house. Got two lovely begonias here that I seem to be able to keep quite nicely. This is a red flame, which I did a care video on this channel where I chopped off the roots, and it's responded very well, and it's flowering at the moment. They tend to flower in the winter, these plants, for some reason. And then I've got a Begonia Rex next to it. So they're both living in terracotta, and they're unglazed as well, which means that they tend to dry out quite often. So I'm having to water quite often, these guys, and they do show it when they've not been watered. They always lose leaves, don't be too concerned about that. But they are gorgeous plants if you can get them happy. They like lots of light, and they do like moist soil from what I can tell. So this, just hanging over it, is the Pothos Devil's Ivy that's growing up here. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? No. I'll show you in a little bit. But it's coming all the way around here, and it's getting attacked by, can you see that? It's getting attacked by Hoya stems. But anyway, I'll show you that in detail in a little bit. So this Devil's Ivy stem's growing quite tall all over here. But anyway, on this second level to the shelf, a Tridescantia, purple pallida, which is a very temperamental plant. Typical of Tridescantia, the stems die back at the base, and you end up with a bushy tip of the stem and a bare base, because it's ground cover, so it wants to attach itself onto soil to continue growing, to strengthen the stems. This is a Monstera that I grew from a wet stick, which is just living in perlite. It's grown quite nicely. A wet stick, I've had it maybe a year and a half, 2 years maybe. The new leaf is unfurling there, looks like it's fenestrated. So the older leaves were not fenestrated. That was the first fenestrated leaf there. Then there was that one, and that one's a little bit more fenestrated, it looks like. So that's just living in perlite. And for a long time, I didn't have hydroponic fertilizer, so it was suffering a little bit. So it would have probably grown a lot better if I'd had the proper fertilizer for it, because you can't just use houseplant fertilizer, I don't think. For plants that are growing in leca or semi-hydro or perlite, it needs to be hydroponic fertilizer for them to get roots. This is another Hoya that I can't really show you. It's one stem that's wrapped itself all around this unit and gone up there. It's a right mess. It's another fussy plant. This is a pickle plant. Can't remember the exact name for it, the proper name. Whenever I brush past it, the leaves fall off. It's an interesting plant. You can see where it gets the name from. For whatever reason, it loses leaves very easily. normally when I brush past it. They end up on the floor and then I step on them and create an almighty mess, which is quite frustrating. This is a Pothos Enjoy. I'll show you the mother plant. This is the mother plant, just underneath it, which I've had a fair while, maybe 2 years now, something like that, 2.5 years. I've taken tons and tons of cuttings from this plant. Normally, as I'm showing something on the channel, how to propagate or something, I tend to use this one. And as a result, it's grown lots of kind of spindly new stems. So I've recently moved it to this spot to get lots and lots of light, and it's responded quite well. Nice plant, I do recommend it. Nice variegation. And just above that is some propagations that I took a while ago. That I've just had, I propagated in water and I just left it basically to live in here. It seems to be doing okay, growing long stems. Need to change that water, probably looking quite green. That's a nice long stem. So that's happily there. And then just under here, or just on the floor here, I forgot to show you. This is my oldest plant, I think. Yeah, peace lily. So this must be a good 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. This is the first plant we bought, me and Mrs. Sheffield, when we moved into our first home. And it's produced lots and lots of offspring, the little lady. And this is the mother plant, still going strong. Doesn't flower that much. It's not flowering at the moment because it's winter. But it does flower maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 flowers throughout the year. So it's not prolific, but it does seem to be okay. I'm always moving it around because it doesn't tend to fit in a lot of places. And then next to it is philodendron lemon and lime that I really need to sort out because I've got it growing up this kind of fake burlap moss pole, which doesn't really do anything for it. And I tied it up when it was already quite long, the stems, which is not really what you want to do. You want to tie it up nice and early so it knows that the support is there and it kind of grows onto it. Whereas what I've got here is a floppy mess, which is not great. So I probably need to sort that out. I'll probably cut it back at some point and propagate all the stems. So I'll do a nice wide shot. Hopefully you can still see me. But this is the Pothos Devil's Ivy that I was talking about. And it's got long stems growing along there. And it's got a stem growing along this picture rail. Showed it lots of times on the channel. But the Hoya, this is an example here, has grown into it. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or not, but it seems to be kind of taking over that Pothos plant, which is a bit of a semi-worry. Got a yellow leaf on it. Probably needs a drink because it is living in terracotta, unglazed. So I do need to water it quite often, which is quite frustrating. And next to it, I've got another jade that I've kind of had nowhere else to put this plant, so I've put it just next to there. It seems to be doing okay. 3 plants in 1 pot, basically that is. And then just underneath, so I've got 2 shelves that we've put up in this little alcove here. So this is where Mrs. Sheffield works. She works from home. The little desk set up here, surrounded by plants. Doesn't look like bliss. But on this shelf here, got another Santi grow light. Again, 2 10-watt bulbs clip on onto this shelf, shining over these plants. So first of all, we've got a little Tradescantia teddy bear vine, Cyanotis coensis. Oh, I remembered that, it's quite good. So this is a little tiny cutting that I've got in this cute little pot here, which is a self-watering pot. And the reservoir is all dry, so that needs a top up. That's the so yeah, it feels quite dry. So I need to top that up, but it's quite interesting. The hair on the dole, so that sits there very nicely. I'll put that there while I'm just talking about these 2. So this is a Aglaonema with a yellow leaf. You can see all my sins. But this one, again, this featured in another video of mine. Well, I gave my plants soy sauce, which was a little bit of a disaster. Quite a funny video, you should check that out. This is one that I didn't give soy sauce. The other one that I did has died, unsurprisingly. Again, this feels light and dry, so I've not watered my plants for a little while, and I think I need to go around and top up. So that one's, I'm not a fan of this plant, to be honest, really. The shape of it, a little bit straggly, a little bit ugly. We have a croton. So the last croton I had a few years ago got eaten by spider mites and it died. I didn't know much about houseplants at the time. I didn't know why I was doing it, but looking back, I think it was spider mites that got it. I did see some webbing that I didn't really think anything of, but I've since got this one. Did this feature in a video? Yes, it did, where I watered my plant every day for 30 days, and this was one of them. So you can check out that video, and that is a very nice plant. So it is growing in that direction, as you can see. So I've kind of faced it that way against this grow light for it to hopefully start to grow that way. So we'll put that back there. Into my kitchen now, and my kitchen doesn't get left out. I've got plants absolutely everywhere. Even the kids' room I've got plants. I'll show you those as well in a little bit. They've got plants in there. They seem to be showing a little bit of an interest, which is quite fun. So just here, I've got Calafea algagrass, which is one of my favourite Calafeas. This is a baby one. I'll show you a mother plant one, which is my big beast of a plant that sometimes shows itself on the channel, and I get lots of comments in my videos. So this one I actually root pruned a little while ago. Let's have a look how she's doing actually. So I hacked off the bottom half really of the roots, and seems to be responding quite well. So that's fine, little Calafea algagrass. And then I have my fern. This is the one and only ferns that I have in my house. Got this last year and it seems to be doing okay during the winter. No crispy fronds, which is good. Just a couple in the middle because there's no light in the middle because it's so bushy. I think it's just like your classic bog standard fern that you find in all the shops. Nothing too exotic, and I've got a care video on ferns that you can check out and how I keep mine looking so healthy, which is all pure luck. And then up here, in my last tour, I mentioned how this plant hadn't grown much, and then loads of people were saying that I've been scammed by the shop, so that's a little bit disappointing. Apparently it's to do with the cuttings, leaf cuttings with no stem or something that don't grow. So I've had this a couple of years now, 2.5 years maybe, and it's not really grown much at all, so apparently I got scammed. So just next to the Calafea and the fern here, behind me, got a few interesting bits and pieces here. First of which is my Philodendron Birkin. Interesting because it was once my favourite plant in the whole wide world, and it's since become the ugly duckling. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I might try it in leca and see if I can somehow rescue it and cut it right back and all that kind of stuff. I've heard lots of people say they've had good results growing in leca and semi-hydro, so I think we'll try that, because I've tried not giving it water, I've tried giving it, making sure it stays moist, I've tried giving it lots of light, low light, I've tried everything, and it still produces weird deformed leaves, or they go mushy and brown and die off. The new leaves, that is, that come out white. So that's a bit frustrating, but it is what it is. And then this is my other coleus. That looks pretty much exactly the same as the other one. Feels very light again, so I do need to water that. That's on quite a nice little stand, little pot stand, quite like that. Gives it some height. And then an Aglaonema, which was in my I put my plants in zero light for 30 days video that you can check out. And again, this one's responding quite nicely. I did pull them out before they absolutely went to pot. Well, all but a couple anyway. All but 2 have survived. RIP Fern and Haworthia is all I'll say. But yeah, nice plant, responding well in a very nice bright coloured pot. I do like a bright coloured pot, as you might have noticed. Got some cress that my daughter is growing as a little experiment, just on some cotton wool. And then interestingly here is Philodendron verrucosum wet stick that I propagated. And it's producing leaves. So it's produced a tiny little leaf there, and it's now unfurling a new bigger leaf there. So that's good. So that is living in semi-hydro, in perlite. So I'll make sure to give it some hydroponic fertilizer, which I think is down here. Yeah, so I've got my normal houseplant focus for plants in soil, and then I've got hydroponic houseplant focus, which is a new product apparently, only come out recently. So I did struggle, I wanted to get the same brand because I'd had good results with the houseplant focus, and I heard that that had come out, but I struggled to find it, but I did find some in the end. So I've got another verrucosum. I think I need to top up the reservoir. They're just, perlite's gone everywhere. Never mind. I'll clean that up after this. But yeah, it feels very dry. Just got them living on saucer. So I need to top that up. And then a similar thing, can't remember what this is. Whatever it is, looks like it's dead. That was ficus, little stem piece or something, but that looks like it's dead. Never mind. So that is the kitchen dining room. I'll show you the living room. All right then, so we are in to my living room. Lots of plants in here. And this is a fairly new addition. It's not featured in any of my tour videos before. I've only recently put it on. I was inspired by Jeff at Everything Plants, his video, and he put a shelf on the wall and plonked a load of the plants on there. So I thought, oh, I have to do that. So yeah, installed this floating shelf, which admittedly feels a little bit wonky, a little bit wobbly rather. So hopefully it won't come down, but I think it is securely on there. But anyway, again, I've got Santi grow lights. So I've actually got 4 kind of grow light stations in the house. 2 of them in here and 2 of them in the dining room. I'll probably add more over the years, I'm sure I will. So just a few plants on here. This is the mother plant to the Tradescantia teddy bear vine, Cyanotus coensis, I think it is. But just look at it. It's absolutely monstrous, this plant, once it really starts to grow. It doesn't tend to suffer from the bare stems like the other Tradescantias do. So if you want a Tradescantia, I recommend this. Quite low maintenance, which is saying something for a Tradescantia. This is a Gollum Jade, a slightly more established plant, living in this nice white pot. Nice and firm, feels quite light. Probably needs a drink, but they do store lots of water in their leaves, so they can handle a little bit of drought like they do in the wild. And then this is the second of my live moss pole experiments that I'm doing. And on this one, whereas I had a verrucosum, Philodendron verrucosum on the other one, here I've got a Philodendron melanocrysis on here, which real name melanochrysum, but I call it melanocrysis because it's always in crisis. So there's a little baby plant in there. Hopefully you can see that. Just growing, just starting to grow. So that'll attach onto this moss that already feels quite dry, I must say. So I do need to give it a drink. Yeah, it feels dry at the top anyway. So I need to give that a drink so that the airy roots latch on and they'll grow nice, big, beautiful velvety leaves, nice and big. That's the plan anyway. There'll probably be a video on that on the channel fairly soon when I start to see some results. Another Tradescantia that's fairly well behaved. Does need cutting back every once in a while, which is what I've done to this one. I can't remember the exact name of this Tradescantia. You'll be able to see it online. Quite distinctive against all the others. Quite a bushy plant. So I think I've got a video on the channel of cutting this back, right back, all the stems and growing new growth, which is what this has done. So do check that out. And then I have my plant kryptonite, the Calaphea zebrina, which is actually looking very nice at the moment. Not many yellow or brown leaves. And that is because I use water conditioner to get rid of the chlorine. And this is very sensitive to that, as far as I can see. It was an absolute mess for a long time. I kept having to rehab it, and that was because of the chlorine. When I switched to water conditioner, much healthier. It seems to be liking that spot. We'll just change the position of it a little bit so the other side gets some light from the grow light. So this is another one of my little grow light setups. I've got another grow light in here actually. This is a 10-watt bulb that you screw into an existing light fixture. So I've got it into this desk lamp, and that shines down here, which normally lives my giant Calafate Eldergrass, big beast. So he currently lives down here. I've moved him so I can film this bit of the video. But absolutely glorious looking thing, isn't he? And he's very happy with his lot in life in this corner of the room. So this is about 3 meters away from the window, which is over there, which is why I've got these grow lights in this corner, because it's a very dark corner of the room and the plants would suffer otherwise. So here, I just keep loads of my propagations really. I've got this little jade tray that I did a video on the channel for, propagating through leaf cuttings. There's one. So you can propagate through leaf cuttings with a jade plant. So I've got a tray of those that I've not potted up yet. So I'll just keep them here under this grow light. Spider plant in the corner. This is in my 30-day zero light challenge video. Feels quite dry, probably needs a top up of water, but that has bounced back very nicely. Spider plants do bounce back very well. So then over here, I just got loads of cuttings on my Philodendron verrucosum. That one's not got any new leaves yet. That's a melanochrysum cutting that I'm just waiting for a new stem to grow. Most of these are living in perlite. Ficus elastica teneki. I think that's a little, it's not a wet stick because there's a leaf there. But there's a little stem growing in there. This is a more established verrucosum propagation. So I cut the old leaf there, and that's the new leaf unfurling. This one has an unfurled leaf, that one there. Beautiful plant, big fan. And then we've got any other unfurled? No, they're all the same. This one, melanochrysum. Tiny little stem piece trying to grow out of there, looking a little bit deformed. Yeah, and then here, got a little tray of string of hearts. So I had a string of hearts up there in a very dark, high spot in this room. It wasn't getting any light and it was looking really straggly. So I cut it all back and propagated it. I did it for my Patreon page. I propagated the stems into here and it's sprouting new stem pieces. Like that one there. So that's coming along quite handsomely. So that'll hopefully turn into a nice big bushy string of hearts, which is a plant that I always struggle with. Very nice plant here, Aglonema tigres, which would probably be in my top 5 easiest plants to look after. It really doesn't provide me with any issues whatsoever, no fuss at all. Just happily lives in this relatively medium at best, probably dark light spot here, quite 2.5 meters away from the window, and it pushes out new growth. It's not that prolific, but it does push out some new growth, and it's just happy with its lot in life. So I do recommend that, Aglonema tigres. And then Philodendron Brazil, oh, that's very light. Giving it the old finger test. Good old finger in, and it's got dry soil. That needs a drink. Philodendron Brazil on a trellis, staked trellis here. I've got some propagations of this that I'll show you in a little bit. Very easy to propagate, as most philodendrons are. And it's just kind of draped on here, looks quite nice. Again, not the best light for it, because it does want to lose some of the variegation in the leaves, like that one is nearly all dark green. So it's reverting back to its original form, but I've got nowhere else to put it, and I think it looks quite nice there. Snake plant, which is not the best thing in the world. It shot out this really long, thin lanky specimen, which you might quite like. Some commenters on my video say they quite like that, quite structural, but I don't really like the thin leaves stretching itself because it hasn't got enough light basically. These need direct sunlight, at least in my climate anyway. And this is another propagation of Philodendron melanocrisis. So this one is much more further along. So that's the old leaf. I probably need to cut that off actually. The old leaf that I used to propagate with, the old stem. And that's a new leaf that has come out. Absolutely gorgeous, growing up this plank of wood. So I wish I had on a trellis Zella, but I don't have it on this little plank of wood. It's not extendable, which is a bit of a shame. And there's a new leaf unfurling here. And there's a good old fungus gnat catcher there. And that's just living inside Botanica soil, so it's quite happy. So that's the plants on the windowsill, and I'll show you next to the window. Okay, so here we are in front of the window. A bit of an awkward spot for me because I've got this massive couch in front of the window, a bit awkward. But above my head, another spider plant that produces lots and lots of pups. But it's quite an ugly looking thing, I'm sure you'll agree. I think it gets too much light here, too much direct sunlight. So this is a west facing window and it gets direct sunlight at the end of the day. I don't think it likes it particularly, but it produces lots of pups, so I'll just leave it to do its thing and I'm not too bothered about it. This is one of my pride and joys, just next to my couch. Little pothos planter that I made for the channel, got a video on this. So it's a mix of 3 pothos plants. Satin pothos, which is that. A devil's ivy, which is this one here. And then a neon. I think it's a neon pothos anyway. So the 3 of those together complement each other very well. Very nice plant. And again, it's in a good old colourful orange pot. So that lives there, quite happy. New stems continue to grow. This one's a bit of an odd one, bit of an alien looking plant. Alocasia amazonica, elephant ear. This is actually doing much better this winter than it did last winter. Towards the end of summer last year, it lost a lot of its leaves. It regrew all this foliage here this year or last summer. And there's only that one leaf that looks like it's going dormant. So it does seem to be doing well. There's even a couple of new leaves coming through. So must be very happy in this spot. Nice bright blue pot. So yeah, interesting plant, and I've got it facing in one direction so that all the leaves kind of face towards the light. I don't know what's best really, to have them all crooked or not. So on the windowsill, Philodendron Brazil propagation, just a little baby plant with a fungus gnat catcher behind it. By the way, if you're struggling with fungus gnats, I highly recommend beneficial nematodes. It seemed to pretty much got rid of my problem. I do still keep the fungus gnat catchers in there so I can monitor them. But I've got a video on that. Interesting video using beneficial nematodes. I highly recommend them, the best thing I've ever used. This one is a little snake plant, variegated, similar to the one I showed you in the dining room. And it's absolutely caked in diatomaceous earth because there's some webbing at the bottom. It's probably just spider webbing, but it is quite fine in places. So I absolutely caked it in diatomaceous earth to kill it. I did that for a video last year. I've just kind of left it really. I've not seen any damage on the leaves to suggest that there is a massive colony of spider mites on here. But I'll leave it there anyway. It's a bit annoying, diatomaceous earth, because it goes everywhere, it goes all over your clothes. So I've got a video on that you can check out. I've got another Ficus elastica. I've got tons of these around the house. And this again is living in perlite. A little bag of perlite. I need to top up the reservoir and give it some hydroponic feed. But that seems to be doing quite nicely. Nice little baby Ficus elastica. So this one is another one that looks like this with one central stem. And I cut it back like I did the one in the dining room, and it's branched out successfully into 2 branches. And I probably need to defoliate these leaves at the bottom, I think, to tidy it up. Looks a bit odd. Let me know what you think. Should I get rid of these leaves at the bottom? I think maybe I should. So next to the Ficus elastica, so I've got another one of these little shelving units that I've had built by my local joiner here in Sheffield. But a little Echeveria, doesn't really do much. This big boy here is a rather yellowing, what's it called? Peperomia polybotria. Raindrop plant, I think it's called. I don't think it likes the west-facing aspect here. The afternoon sun rays are a little bit too strong for it, and it's fading the leaves. But basically, I've had it for a few months in this spot, and I'm seeing if it can adapt to its surroundings. If it continues to struggle so much, I'm picking off dead leaves here. It's quite healthy, really. I mean, it's producing flowers and stuff. It does dry out quite quickly. It feels quite light. Does it feel light? Yeah, it does. It does need a regular drink. Probably needs an uppotting as well, so I'll probably do that. It's just these leaves that have faded from the bright light. So I'll just leave it to face that way, and hopefully it'll become acclimatized. Down here, I've got on the lower shelf 3 peperomias. The Peperomia Santorini, which I recently uppotted, and it's pushed out lots of new growth. Very happy plant. I do recommend that for a peperomia because it's quite easy going, dead easy to propagate as well. So if you want lots of those, I highly recommend it. There's another peperomia. What's this one called? Angulata, I think it's called. Again, dead easy. Quite a slow grower, as peperomias tend to be. And I've got another spider plant down here, which I think this is a cutting from the mother plant from somewhere. It might have been a cutting from one of the babies behind me. Grown into this massive bush in the space of about a year. So that's good. Again, it feels light. I've not been watering my plants regularly enough. Next to the spider plant, I have another Peperomia obtusifolia, and this one is looking much healthier than the other one that I showed you in the dining room. And that is because I think there's 3 plants in this pot, and it's in a glazed terracotta. This makes a big difference, glazing the terracotta, both inside, outside, and the saucer. Just means that it retains water much better than an unglazed terracotta. It's not drying out so much. Although peperomias are quite drought tolerant, wouldn't want to be drying out too much. And I've got some felt pads underneath the saucer to help with my wood. I did a hacks video a few weeks ago showing this. I do recommend adding just some little sticky felt pads to the bottom of the pots, just to protect the wood. You can buy them from IKEA. This is a Monstera adansonii. I don't know about you, but Monstera adansonii tend to look a little bit ropey after a while. This is a cutting that I took from the dining room plant. I've got 2 cuttings, one down here, one upstairs in the bedroom, which is one of my favourite plants. I'll show you that in a bit. But this one's nice and handsome. It's in a good spot, I think, because this is west facing. The sun comes round and sets over there, and it's kind of protected from that because it's got this shelving unit here. So it's protected from the harsh light, but it gets a nice bright light, indirect light. And all the leaves are deep, dark green, which is fantastic. Probably needs a watering, like most of my plants are showing at the moment, showing me up to be a lazy plant parent. This one is not so successful. Ficus elastica Teneki Ruby, which for some reason is dying. I'm not sure why. The soil's nice and moist. It's not too moist, not too wet, but because it's got drainage holes in the pot. But for whatever reason, the leaves are looking very ropey. Hopefully it will bounce back come spring. So next to my Peperomia polybotria, this is the mother plant of the fiddle leaf figs. I had some cuttings that I took off this plant. I cut it back, and it looks like it's just starting to develop new stems. So that's good. feels quite dry, the soil. So these this is in the ficus family, so they like as much light as you've got, even a little bit of direct sunlight. So these plants get direct sunlight and they all seem to be doing just fine. Maybe not the peperomia, polybotria. So this one, the ficus benjamina, sure does love lots of light. I was struggling with this plant for quite a long time because I wasn't giving it enough light and I wasn't giving it enough water either. I corrected both those things by plonking it here and giving it a drink every once in a while. It's nice and bushy now. Maybe a little bit too bushy. Maybe could do a little bit of pruning back. So that one's nice and happy. And I've got an aloe vera that an ex-work colleague gave me. My other aloe vera that I had died. It was just it was the thicker, longer ones. Don't know what type this is. Seems more forgiving, easier going because it's not gone grey and brown like my other one did and eventually died. Too mushy. But this one, just give water sparingly and it seems quite content in this spot, in this west-facing spot. This is a cutting from my Hoya Lisa, which feels very light. Probably need to give this a drink. Need to give all my plants a drink. And I've got this climbing up my kind of haphazard hanger wire thing that I did for my hacks video that you can check out. So I just climbing, got these stems supported on that to kind of lift it up so it's not climbing all over the floor. That is that area. And then behind me is my philodendron new red, which I've got kind of hidden behind this wall. And therefore it means that it wants to kind of grow that way in search of the light. So it's kind of grown in a funny way, but kind of adds to its appeal really. Quite nice. So that is it for the living room. I'll show you upstairs. So I mentioned that Sheffield Junior is getting into houseplants. He's only 4 years old, but I seem to have given him the houseplant bug, which is good because he's got 4 plants here growing on his windowsill. So first, he's got a satin pothos collection of cuttings that we potted up into perlite hydroponically, and they're growing out as we speak. They've all got roots, but we're just waiting for new stems to appear. Got a little baby jade plant. This was the cutting that we took from the mother plant downstairs in the dining room. Got lots of little white specks on the leaves, which are nothing to worry about. I think they're just calcium build-up coming through the leaves, and jade plants always get this. And people might think, they often see this and they think that the plant's got a disease, but it's not. It can normally just be wiped off with a cloth or with your fingers. Just really get rid of the white stuff. It does come off. It's not a bug, not mealybug or anything like that. Always happens. Even this tiny little cutting here has got it on there. Even the little tiny stem pieces at the bottom got little white spots on. Nothing to worry about. So that's that. So there's the 3 plants, and then we've got some propagations that he's doing, the little master. Some monstera cuttings. To be honest, I've got nowhere to put these, so I plonked them up here and he seems to enjoy it anyway. So just starting, the aerial root is just starting to grow into something. So that is a nice bright spot, east facing window, and they will develop roots and stems, and then we'll pot them up for him. So here we are in Princess Sheffield's room now, and she has got some plants on the go as well. Just a little selection on her windowsill here. This one's one of my favourites. This is a type of snake plant, which has a different texture, firmness, colour, shape to most snake plants, or the ones that I've got anyway. Very, very firm. Very strange looking plant, very alien, but that is happily growing in this pot. It's got new pups coming out of the side of the pot, which is dead interesting. So there's a nice happy plant. Tons of light up here. And then she's doing a little project for school. She's 8 years old. Doing a little project, science project, to see which plant grows best in which soil. She could do her own little YouTube channel, couldn't she? But I gave her a bunch of these Pothos Marble Queen cuttings. So she's got one growing in water, one growing in semi-hydro, which basically little pebbles, little stones. So these aren't rooted yet, waiting for them to root and then to grow into their new plants. One growing in just your standard houseplant soil mix, and then one growing in leca, which, looking at it now, the leca and the semi-hydro have got dry reservoirs, so they need to be topped up because they're drying out probably. So it'll be interesting to see which one of these grows first, roots first, and then stems first, and she'll report back to her teacher. So here we are in the master bedroom to Casa Sheffield. So just in front of the fireplace, which is about 1.5 meters, 2 meters away from the window, west facing window above the living room. I've got one of my oldest plants, Monstera deliciosa, or Monstera bossagiana should I say. So this was a plant we bought from IKEA a number of years ago. It must be a good 8 years ago, something like that. Quite a small plant. And it's grown into this big boy here, climbing up this haphazard kind of free bamboo stick trellis system that I've got in here. There's a new leaf unfurling there, which is always good to see with a Monstera. And we've got a younger brother, or maybe son, shall I say, or daughter, to this plant. This is a cutting that I took a 1.5 years ago maybe. So I rooted it, I popped it into this terracotta pot, which is probably not the greatest pot for it because it's unglazed and it dries out quite quickly. I used to have it downstairs in a nice bright spot, which is why it's got a couple of leaves, hopefully I can balance it, with perforations in the leaves, like those. But now it's up here in a little bit of a darker spot. I might lose those with the new leaves anyway. I'll keep these obviously, but the new leaves might not get the perforations because they need lots of light for that. I do have a little terracotta stake in here, which is quite handy for watering. Just fill the reservoir with water and it kind of slowly irrigates the soil around. So this one sits here. I didn't really have a space for this downstairs anymore because it's getting quite big. Next to these, we have one of my favourite plants because it's growing very nicely up this treleaf trellis. Hopefully I can show you all of that. So this is the treleaf trellis, the Zella again, and the stems of the Monstera adansonii has fully latched on. It's growing bigger and bigger leaves as it grows taller and taller. Hopefully you can see that. So this is a really nice plant, and like I was saying earlier, they do sometimes get random brown leaves, which is what's happened there. Just in the corner, little brown leaf. Not sure why. There's a new leaf unfurling at the top. So I think this is quite a nice little area of the house. This is like the Monstera area. So the window to our main bedroom, master bedroom, this is I think the brightest spot in the house. It's west facing and it's not obstructed by anything. So downstairs in the living room you might have seen that hedge that was blocking quite a bit of the light. Needed to be cut back, to be honest. Didn't do that at the end of last year, so it needs to be cut back. We'll wait for spring to appear. So there's nothing obstructing it. The houses as well, not really obstructing it like they are downstairs, our neighbours opposite. So this is where I keep the sun-loving plants, basically, like the succulents and cacti. So going through, just a little, I don't know what type of cactus this is. This was given to me by Mrs. Sheffield's aunt as a cutting, 2 cuttings. So I put, no, 3 cuttings in fact. I put them into this pot and they're growing, seem to be growing offspring. Quite a nice little plant, quite happy there. Another Echeveria. Just thought I could hear water at the bottom, but I don't think I can I? No, it's just the stones from the top dressing. So as with most Echeverias, they always lose their lower leaves like that. That one was quite fresh, but that one's extra crispy. KFC style. So you can just pull these off really. Tidy up the appearance of the plant. And then the new growth will come out of the top like this one does, like a little rosette style. Looks nice in this pink pot. Give it lots of light because the farina grows with lots of light, I think. The farina on the leaves, which is the powdery coating. And this is a wavy jade. And this one, I think, needs up potting into a more appropriate soil mix because it's always very dense, the soil. I can't get my finger in there. So it becomes quite hydrophobic. So I often have to dunk it into a bowl of water or the sink and let it proper hydrate for a good half an hour. Otherwise it tends to go dry and lose its leaves. So I probably need to do that again and give it a repot into some proper soil that it likes. Another Echeveria, similar to the one downstairs, another cutting from one of the plants that I've got downstairs. One of the Echeveria, that one's not too leggy so far, probably because it's getting lots of light here in this west facing position. This is a sedum. So for the longest time I got this plant all wrong. I didn't understand it because, well, it's a crawler. It tends to crawl along like a Monstera deliciosa. And I was forcing it to grow upright. So I put in some sticks and try and tie it so it grows upright. And I kept wondering to myself why it didn't really enjoy that. But then I looked it up and I read that it's a crawler, it likes to grow along. So it's a bit awkward because it kind of takes up a lot of space. So I don't know how I had it actually, but have it like that. Gets in the way. And then we have another J plant, again, not in a pot with drainage holes, so going against my own advice. Got a nice thick trunk, but it doesn't seem to grow that quickly compared to the one I've got downstairs in my dining room, the bigger one. Got another cactus, that feels very heavy, and that's living in stones maybe or something. But, oh, golden barrel cactus, £6. Got that from Good Home. Don't know what that is, that might be home base or something. But that's a nice plant, doesn't change much, doesn't grow or anything. So that just sits there. And then in this pink pot, another type of Echeveria, more of a furry one rather than a one with farina on the leaves. I think we got this from IKEA, this whole thing. I think it might have had 3 plants in here originally. So I recently repotted it into 1 plant to make it a bit more of a nicer piece. So there you have it, that is the end of this houseplant tour for winter 2024. So go check out this video here, which is my previous houseplant tour for summer 2023. And you can see the differences between what I've got now and what I had last time. Quite a few bits have changed. Thanks for watching, I'll see you again in the next one.